In this video, we are unboxing some Golden Age books that came from the collection of Mathhew Manos. I'll put a link down in the description to the original video where I purchased Mathew's collection. And we're also going to go over the grader's notes so that we can become more comfortable with how CGC is currently grading Golden Age comic books. Stay tuned.
Bry's Comics.
Welcome to Bry's Comics. If you're new here, this channel is all about comic book investment and speculation and tips on how to be a better collector, how to have this hobby fund itself, and a big part of that is understanding how CGC grades comic books. So we're going to get into that more in this video, and I also have a bunch of future videos planned to go into way more detail about that. If that's something that interests you, please consider hitting subscribe. It will enter you to win a free slab each and every month. This month we're giving away 2 12-cent X-Men books, one here on the YouTube channel if you subscribe, comment, and like this video, and the other if you head over to bryscomics.com and sign up for the newsletter over there. You're entered to win another 12-cent X-Men comic, and that's also where I send out first notice of new inventory like the books you're going to see in this video. Tons of other Silver Age books coming later this week and next week. I've got some new collections coming in, so make sure you're signed up over there so you don't miss out. Follow me over on Instagram for trades for grails and fresh content over there, and lastly on Whatnot, we're having a ton of fun steals and deals over on Whatnot. It really is true. Almost all of the books that are sold on my Whatnot channel go for less than fair market value. Almost all of them. Anyone that's been to my shows can attest to that. There are great deals to be had, and it's also a lot of fun. Link in the description for $15 towards your first purchase. I usually put something in the buy it now for $15, so if you sign up, stop by, you can pick up a free book. I do believe you have to pay for shipping, but with that said, let's hop into this unboxing. Starting off with a banger, Detective Comics number 57 from 1941. Just a super early Batman comic book. I mean, within the first few years of Batman even being introduced, this book is super scarce. There's only 56 total graded copies on the census, and one of the things I love about these Golden Age books is when they fit in the regular size case. It just looks magical, like they're floating in there where the book goes right up to the edge of the case. The alternative to this is when it doesn't quite fit, like if there's like a big spine roll or something, or the book is like fanned out a little bit. Sometimes it has to go into a magazine size case, which is absolutely terrible. So when they do come back in a regular case, it just looks so freaking cool. This one is extra special because it came from the collection of Jerome Wanker and comes with this COA, and it talks about how he had one of the most complete collections of DC Comics. So that's pretty cool. It comes with that COA as well. On the back cover, we get that Baby Ruth ad that talks about how much energy the candy bar gives to you. Just some classic Golden Age advertising. And the grader's notes say, heavy tear left center of cover through book. So heavy tear left center of front cover that goes through the book. So this is something that's interesting, you know, that you can really tell through the case, something you would have to refer to the grader's notes on. The notes also say light soiling. So this is a book that, you know, I didn't even, you know, clean or press. In fact, I don't think I cleaned or pressed any of the books in this submission just because it's so fragile. And putting it, you know, under any kind of pressure with all these splits and everything, I was worried about causing more damage. And really, if you took the light soiling off of this book, I think it still gets a 2.0. It just is what it is. The notes also say moderate creasing. So as you can see, you know, it's a 2.0, moderate creasing, moderate staining. So here's some of the staining here, some kind of moisture damage or whatever on the book, and it's probably got similar stuff on the back. Moderate staple rust, so there you can see the top staple is moderately rusted. This isn't the type of staple rust that I would really be too concerned about the longevity of the book. It would have to be a little bit worse than that, I think, to, you know, conserve the book or do anything about the staple rust. I think in this degree, it's probably fine to keep it the way it is. And then we also have small multiple tape on the interior of the cover. Beautiful 2.0 Detective Comics number 57, super affordable Golden Age Batman book. And then we have Uncanny Tales number 26. This is from 1954, and it's a pre-code horror book where it has the Spider-Man. So clearly this is a different Spider-Man than the one that we all know and love, the hero Peter Parker Spider-Man. This is just a horror, pre-code horror version of the Spider-Man, but it was just really cool to me to see that this idea was kicking around in people's heads even before Amazing Fantasy 15. And when we look at the Graders Notes, it says light spine splits to cover. Here you can see in the bottom corner, the spine has a little bit of a split. So this is the type of thing, you know, that you want to look out for restoration. If you see a split like that that's been sealed shut, that would get a restored label. This one isn't too bad, so it probably doesn't affect the grade too much. Light tears to cover, and so that's what you see there. Moderate creasing and moderate spine stress lines. So this is a book that I actually did, I remember now, I did press this one, and it just goes to show you though that, you know, pressing has its limitations. You can see it actually looks pretty flat. There's not a lot of creasing, you know, that can be fixed with a press at this point. It's incredibly difficult to get a press to stay and not revert back with books that are this old. I mean, when the creases have been there for 50, 60 plus years, you know, you have to think about like, how much time do I have to keep this book in the press under pressure to undo 50, 60 years of, you know, damage that was caused to it. Moderate spine stress lines. So this is what moderate spine stress lines look like for anybody. Like, I would say, you know, moderate is pretty darn bad, but the technical term for pretty darn bad is moderate. And moderate scuffing. So scuffing is a defect, you know, that happens when books are stacked on top of each other, and over the years they rub, and some of the color can either lift off. It's very similar to color lift, but it's harder to see scuffing through a case. Next up, we have Thrilling Comics number 38 from 1943. This is just an awesome Golden Age cover that checks so many boxes for collectors. It's an Alex Schomburg cover. It's a bondage cover because you got the chick right here tied onto the gun here. You've got Nazis on the cover. You got Nazis getting knocked out. I mean, it just checks so many collectors boxes. All three of those things are little niches in the hobby, so when you put them all together on one, it just makes for a really cool book. Probably the coolest thing about this book is the scarcity. There's only 24 copies in the world on the CGC census, 24 total graded copies, and this book has a lot going on with it. I mean, it's a 2.5. I did not press or clean it for several reasons. Number one, this piece right here was hanging on almost magically. I mean, I could not understand what was holding this chunk on. It wasn't restored. It wasn't held on by tape or rice paper or anything. It was just hanging on by the tiniest paper fibers. And I was actually concerned that, you know, in its journey to CGC and getting put inside the case, that this could actually come loose, but it didn't, which is really, really awesome. The Graders Notes say we've got heavy creasing, we've got moderate foxing, we've got moderate staple tears, and we've got moderate tear right top front. So that was the moderate tear. The moderate foxing is this kind of, you know, almost rust looking stuff that's all over the book. There's nothing that can be safely done about this for a Golden Age book of this era. If you were to try, you know, the hot press bled box method, first of all, that is technically restoration, so you would be risking getting this book restored, and second of all, you know, this definitely would have came off. These pages are, you know, super old. I mean, it's from 1943, so putting them under that kind of stress would almost guarantee that it would cause damage, and when the foxing is all over the cover, there's no way you can get all of it, so it just would be obvious that something was done to the book. So the moderate staple tears, this book is right here, and you can see that, you know, the cover and the pages, they're hanging on there, you know, but they're obviously, you know, it has moderate staple tears, which moderate in my opinion means pretty bad. There's only one staple on this book. It has the one staple right there, and the reason for that is this book is from 1943, and so metal was in high demand because of the war, so they cut down the number of staples that were allowed to be added to comic books. I mean, that is such an amazing cool factor to me, just showing the time sign of the times, like just such an important piece of comic book history. And you got the Nazis on the cover. Then you couple that with the fact there's only 24 in the world. It's an Alex Schonberg cover. It's a Nazi cover. I mean, it is so freaking cool. I would not be opposed to hanging on to this book in the personal collection. Next, we have Spook number 27 in a 1.0. Now, this one is really interesting. This cover is completely detached, and this is a pre-code horror book that is collectible and awesome because it's an L.B. Cole cover. L.B. Cole is one of the most popular pre-code horror comic book artists, and you just a really recognizable style and very collectible, very expensive artist in L.B. Cole. The spine is completely split and the front of the book is completely detached. So when this thing was raw, you could just take the cover, the front cover completely off. The back cover was attached, but this thing is completely detached, and I knew that. It also has wormholes in the back, which is really interesting. You can see right here, a bookworm got through the book. It goes through pretty much the whole book except the front cover, and that's what a wormhole looks like. It's different than silverfish damage, a different type of pest. On the back, there's moderate creasing and moderate staining. So obviously, this book would not benefit whatsoever from a clean or a press. It just is what it is, and so that's why we did not clean or press this one. Another little awesome bonus here is the Kelpidine diet ad. Those who follow the channel know that I'm a huge fan of these Kelpidine ads. This was a gum that you could chew that was full of iodine from kelp in the ocean. That's why they call it Kelpidine, because it's made from kelp and rich in iodine, which was incredibly dangerous because of the high levels of iodine that turned out not to be good, but they were being sold here as a weight loss thing. Dr. Phillips' plan, you just eat this gum, follow a simple plan, and you lose weight. It turns out the plan involves you starving yourself to death, even though it says here, don't starve yourself. But just an awesome little ad. This isn't my favorite of the Kelpidine ads, but it is a really cool one. Next, we have Shock Suspense Stories number 1. One of the most annoying things about looking this book up when you first is you don't realize it's not suspense stories, it's suspense stories. It's kind of hard, like it won't show up on stuff if you don't type it in correctly, but it's Shock Suspense Stories number 1. Electrocution cover is from EC Comics. It's from 1952, and this is just, the start of this classic pre-code horror run that has some of the most valuable pre-code horror comics that there are. And this is issue number 1. And it's just so collectible to have an issue number 1. I almost went down a rabbit hole. I probably still will before I actually die and leave this planet. I'll probably go down the rabbit hole of collecting all the issue number 1s from all the series that I like. Strange Tales number 1, Tales to Astonish number 1, Journey into Mystery number 1, Shock Suspense Stories, you name it. Like, I just think it would be so cool to have like just issue number 1 from those classic stories. My favorite thing about these is the trade dress. I mean, look at that trade dress. The trade dress back in the day, I'm glad that it took up a third of the front cover because it's one of the best parts of the book. So the graders notes say light cover tanning. So what's interesting about that is it has light cover tanning. You can tell from this right here, the tanning doesn't really affect the front of the cover nearly as much. All right, the back cover, you can definitely see there's a little bit of tanning, but the main reason that tanning showed up on the grader's notes is because of the way the interior cover looks from the tanning. And that's something you can't tell through the case, but typically tanning from Golden and Silver Age books is worse on the interior of the front cover, and that really does affect the grade. It also has light spine splits, which is really interesting, that this book with that big of a split is considered light spine splits. But as you can see, it can still have a spine split, I mean, that big up in the front cover and still get a 3.0. So spine splits, I was somewhat surprised at how lenient they are with spine splits. I would have thought that it affected the grade more. Light staining, moderate creasing. This is a book that I can't remember if I pressed it or not. I think this was one because of the spine splits. I was hesitant to press it, but I truly can't remember if I pressed it or not. Small piece out top front cover, and that is the small piece out top front cover right there. I mean, at the end of the day, How much are you going to improve the grade by pressing this book? I don't know. Pressing this book, I believe, the risk versus reward just wasn't there. I mean, there's limiting factors. I think this book taps out at like a 3.5 or a 4.0. So is it really worth, risking the damage because of these minor pressable defects that probably would result in the same grade? I think I decided not to do that one. Superman number 25. I mean, it's a Superman book from 1943. This is also a book that only has one staple. And what's really interesting about this is that, the one staple is right here. It's just interesting to me, that they didn't move the placement of the staple. That probably just has to do with production, and at the time, they weren't thinking that these were highly valuable collectibles. These were pulp comic books, that just get thrown away when they're done being read. So it's not like it really mattered where they put the one staple because they weren't really considering condition. Just another cool factor to add to these World War II era Golden Age books. And the graders notes say heavy creasing, light foreign substance, bottom of front cover. So that's the light foreign substance. I tried to dry clean it off, but it was something sticky. It was going to risk taking off the ink, which would be basically the same thing as having a little foreign substance. So I decided that I just was going to leave that as is. It's got light spine splits, light tears, and medium piece out. Bottom left of front cover. So this is what a medium piece out looks. A pretty hefty piece, but can still get a 3.0 with that size of a piece out. Last but not least, we have Jumbo Comics number 37 in a 6.5. So cool to see this book in such high grade. I'll put up on the screen how many of these are on the census. I know it's a super scarce book. And this is just a really cool series, Jumbo Comics. Jumbo Comics number 1 is the first published interior artwork by Jack Kirby, who went by a different name at the time. And Jumbo Comics number 69 is the first comic art by Matt Baker. So just an iconic series that had a lot of important moments for comic book history. And it also just features an awesome cover here with Sheena, Queen of the Jungle from 1942. The notes say light bends to cover, light cover tanning. So this is another one where there, you can tell that there's actually quite a bit of tanning on the back cover, but it's really worse on the interior front cover of this book. There's also light wear, moderate creasing, and very light pieces out. So for the very light pieces out, they're talking about right there in the corner. So that's the difference between very light piece out and then there's medium piece out. So there's degrees to the different piece outs. This is also a book where there's only one staple in the book, and because of that, I was just super hesitant to press this. I just thought about, man, I wouldn't want to split or tear the cover, but now that I'm looking at it, I probably could have cleaned up a lot of this stuff with a press. That definitely would have increased the grade, at least a little bit. Maybe I could have got a 7.0 or a 7.5. But I just wasn't, willing to take the risk that the price difference between a 6.5 and a 7.5 isn't huge. And so I decided just to send it in as is. So there you have it, guys. Just an awesome set of Golden Age books. It hits a little bit differently when there's 12 copies on the census, 30 copies, 40 copies. It makes you feel like you're holding something truly rare and truly special because they are truly rare and special. Thanks once again to Mathhew Manos for working the deal with me. And thank you to you guys for sticking with me to the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like for your chance to win a 12-cent X-Men comic this month. And don't forget to head over to BryceComics.com. Use code COLLECT10 for 10% off all in-stock items and sign up for that newsletter where you're entered to win another 12-cent X-Men comic this month. Thank you as always for sticking with me to the end. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Bryce Comics.